What about the repeal of PAYGO and the whole force the vote deal?
I think that, yeah, I mean, I think this is a window into like the negotiations that were happening behind the scenes, because this is apparently what we got from Pelosi in return for Pelosi becoming Speaker of the House again. Now, climate change legislation and COVID legislation aren't going to be held to these PAYGO rules, which kind of clears the path for both legislation in response to COVID, but also for bold climate change, some kind of a Green New Deal to be passed. There's still a lot of hurdles. You're going to have your Joe Liebermans and arm twisting. And I think there's going to be a lot of compromises.
The role played by Joe Manchin.
Yeah, by Joe Manchin. And if the Democrats come at this again, like trying to split the baby, like trying to make all of these like corporate powers happy, right? And by trying to implement corporate friendly climate change policy, they're going to end up with something that's not bold and that doesn't do enough for the masses. And they're going to be out of power in 2 years in the Congress. But as a whole, like climate change legislation, like I would have preferred that like she got Medicare for all out of this, that she said like PAYGO isn't going to apply to Medicare for all
Heck no.
I would have been like, I think it would have been better if she would have moved the ball forward on Medicare for all in some way, because like in terms of like building a movement, like climate change legislation is great. We need to make sure that we get the climate under control and that we handle this. But
it would be a jobs program, ideally.
It would be a jobs program. We'll see how exactly a Green New Deal would play out. But, Medicare for all is something tangible, and you would immediately like build and solidify a base with that. And then you would have a lot of people who would approve of this guaranteed health care and would vote for the left-wing party. I mean, hopefully if the Democrat, becomes a genuine left-wing party, people would continue to vote for Democrats. Like just in terms of like playing politics, I'm not sure if like climate change legislation is what really builds the kind of mass swell of support for like a working class party that we would like to see.
Maybe. I mean, there is an economic crisis and employment is a big part of that. So I think maybe in terms of people seeing dividends from the climate side of the Green New Deal, it's not like overnight their air is going to feel cleaner and their water is going to feel cleaner and all that stuff. But, overnight, if everyone is employed in a project that everyone agrees is worth it and is good for everyone and even contributes greatly to social cohesion, I think in that sense, the Green New Deal is very valuable. I think you're right about Medicare for all being valuable in terms of like the meat of what it's for is something that people will feel immediately. And I think it's time to push Medicare for all and get it wedged in as an emergency measure, COVID emergency healthcare. You need to push it through like that. And once people have it, you think they're going to want it taken away when COVID's gone? Heck no.
If that's how they're able to get it, like more power to them.
That's how they have to do it. That's the only chance it has, I think, right now. Because the only way Medicare for all has any chance, I think, at all over the next 10 years is right now in this moment. That was something that you were talking about last time when we were going through this discussion about force the vote, on hashtag force the vote, about pushing for universal healthcare during a pandemic. I'm coming to agree with you that like that the notion of there being a more ripe time is flawed because we're in a healthcare related crisis right now that Medicare for all would address. So just don't call it Medicare for all. Call it the COVID emergency healthcare.
Well, I mean, Medicare for all, I mean, if you're talking about the like political viability of Medicare for all, I mean, in terms of the general public, it's very popular. But I mean, I guess your argument is going to be over like how we twist the arms of like more conservative Democrats to support this in the short term.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's like, oh, look, they won't even give you health care for right now while it's in an emergency, during an emergency.
That's an argument. I mean, we can see if that's the route they go. I don't know if we have like a guarantee that like that's the way that they could try to do it here. And hopefully it is what they do. I mean, we'll see.
But look, I want to say, because going back to our previous discussion, we've already talked about this and we've given our 2 cents then. And I was a certain mind and in a certain position where I was a little more agnostic than you were and all that. And I got to say that my position has definitely moved since then. And particularly in light of the fact that what I was proposing last time was in fact what happened now in terms of a repeal of PAYGO. But number one, this is just a partial repeal. And it really pisses me off that it's only partial because it's this aversion to deficits that flies in the face of how our government spending actually works and looks at all deficits the same, etc. And also what I wanted out of it, and I said back then, was something that had PR value. They could have made this have PR value. They could have bully pulpited this issue of PAYGO and made it known to people. I think what's known to most people is that progressives got something and Nancy Pelosi got her speakership again. Like, they didn't get the repeal of PAYGO by appealing to the public.
Yeah.
They did it by getting a backroom deal with Pelosi, which bothers me because what I wanted, like I said back then, was like for people to know what PAYGO was and realize that that kind of thinking is what Pelosi represents.